Well, folks, welcome back to the Ergo Proxy Retrospective, and I feel it's just about time to wrap this thing up, as I feel it's touched on most of what I wanted to, and I've expressed a lot of the ideas that I feel that I wanted to express based on the show. As always, this video will serve as a nice bow to top off the series, mention a few points I felt could have expanded upon more in this retrospective, or that I may expand upon later in a few one-offs, my personal feelings on the series, and a few housekeeping items. To begin, this retrospective has examined the characters of Ergo Proxy, which I felt needed to be examined the most. Now, as there are many moving pieces in the series, there's also a lot of background characters, which kind of fell under the radar, but at the same time I felt didn't really have the kind of character development or impact beyond a few plot points necessary to really justify them being talked about. To gloss over these characters, these are Proxy 1, who serves as more of a concept than a character, and is kind of hidden until the very last episode. I know he makes like cameo appearances in other episodes, but he really only talks or does stuff in the last episode. A Monad Proxy, which again was more of a concept and lacked development, served more to offer Vincent an easy way out in the final episode and prove how weird and creepy Daedalus was getting. Christiva, that's Rawl's auto rev, who again doesn't necessarily have too much of a character of her own. She, goes to work, does the job, serves her purpose, and makes the audience question stuff a little. She ends up joining the family in the last episode too. I don't think I've mentioned that yet. But again, doesn't really do too much other than kind of assist Rawl on his duties and later become Pino's kind of godmother, I guess. Iggy, who I feel is just a kind of smaller version of Daedalus in that he encompasses the show's message of raison d'etre and the flaws of having someone assign it to you. Because he's like, oh, I was assigned Riel, everything is based on Riel, and then we can see that he becomes obsessive about it, and that's not good, and it slowly destroys him. And I feel like that's the commentary there, and that was kind of touched on the Daedalus episode. As for his character itself, I find it kind of annoying, to be honest. I guess I feel bad for him, because, Riel never really valued him as a being, and it is his death which kind of gets her to reconsider her views on auto revs, so he is important in that regard, but in terms of his actual characters at the show, not much development, not much is done. It's basically a commentary on raison d'etre, as Daedalus is, so I didn't comment on his character. Many of the proxies, they're pretty cool, but again, they're just kind of like one episode characters who serve a plot purpose, and they kind of just, you're defeated or left behind or something. So I feel like none of these characters really justify their own dedicated video. Maybe later I could make a one-off video, a lightning round kind of all these characters. Now, Ergo Proxy is also a show with a lot of philosophical concepts and productions, so I understand that I might have glossed over a few of those as well. I might not have gone over everything that there is in this show. Although, again, I feel like I commented on the major ones that the show was getting about. Gnosticism, nihilism, the purpose of being, finding your own purpose, and general condition of the human state and ability to overcome adversity, which I feel like were the main themes that the show was talking about. It's very interesting talking about these two in the Ergo Proxy retrospective, especially because unlike other stories like, say, Trigun or The Big O, which I felt were at their core character stories, Ergo Proxy seems more of a concept story, and it's very interesting just kind of noting the differences in tone and appearance and writing that kind of brings to the table as opposed to if it's a character-centered story. Again, the messages are a lot the same, and a lot of the characters in Ergo Proxy are actually very well written and fleshed out. It just feels like they are to support ideas as opposed to convey ideas. I mean, they do convey the ideas, but it just feels like Ergo Proxy is not necessarily a character story, which is not a detriment of it. It's just a different kind of story, and I thought that was very interesting looking at it, because I did feel a difference. I don't know if someone else would feel it just watching the series, but I did feel a sort of difference there. On the core points of the series and the retrospective, though, I feel like I got everything, and I feel like I talked about all the big stuff. These points, of course, are the main messages of the series, which I feel came quite clearly to me. These messages are, of course, that one can never give up, one has to look for the truth and answers within, strive for a better life, or at the very least, just continue getting by. Because if given a chance, life will find a way, and that's a beautiful thing, and I feel like that's really the core message of Ergo Proxy. And a beautiful thing is also how I would describe Ergo Proxy as a series. It's quite beautiful, both literally and figuratively. In a literal sense, its unique aesthetic, combining futuristic elements and old-world elements with a pseudo-religious tone, blend the creative world, which is supposedly dead, yet still yearns and succeeds to express itself, and has its own very unique air. It simultaneously feels very scientific, and yet very religious and reverent. In a figurative sense, the beauty of the show is even more apparent, though, as it's a tale of the beauty of life. As noted earlier, while the series may seem bleak on the surface and often gets dismissed as such, it really isn't. In fact, I found it quite uplifting the second time I watched it, as it proclaims that the human condition is still one felt by many, and that it can always improve even in the bleakest of times. While its commentary on nihilism may be a little highbrow, and the Gnostic elements above that, the series never came off as pretentious to me. Except for episode 20. That episode sucks. You can skip that one, doesn't impact anything. I kind of hated it, to be honest. But other than that, I feel like the pretentious reputation the series has is not necessarily warranted, and I don't think you should turn away from it because you've heard it's pretentious. Like I've said, you don't need to get every detail down. That's another thing that people say about the show, that you need to note literally everything. No, you might have to rewatch a couple scenes a few times, but I don't think that you need to take hardcore detailed notes to really get to the core of what they're saying. Because, the story itself is relatively simple if you boil it down to the main point, which is that life will go on, because humanity can and will often get past whatever obstacles will hold it back with enough effort. And this gets to my point where I feel that even though I didn't understand everything they were talking about, or all the highbrow concepts, I still felt I understood the key messages at the very core of the series, which, no matter how delivered, are still inspiring. For this reason, I love Ergo Proxy, and I think it is a masterpiece to be held up high, even if it is a little too highbrow for its own good every now and again. However, because the highbrow elements of this are kind of a stylistic choice, they don't really impact the core message or enjoyability to the show, at least to me. In fact, upon rewatching the series, I went into it not trying to completely parse everything, and instead just letting the key information come to me and sift through my brain, and simply try to enjoy the big picture. As mentioned in the introduction, I watched this as you would ride a wave. I didn't fight it, I just let whatever come to me, and then go from there. And rewatching it this way, I found it actually a lot more enjoyable. I remember the first time I watched this, I paused everything a lot, I rewatched a lot of stuff, and I looked a bunch of stuff up to see, get to know what they were thinking about, and that would leave the higher brow concepts, which, while I eventually understood, I felt that kind of bogged down the series, looking everything up. Watching it like a wave, though, I found that the series' main messages came to me anyways, and even if a lot of the higher stuff, went over my head, that did not impact the main conclusion, that did not impact the main messages, and I found it enthralling. I do stand by this, and I do stand by that Ergo Proxy is a great anime, and that one you should watch. Again, if you don't understand everything, that's okay. I didn't completely understand everything, and I feel like that might even be part of the appeal of it. It kind of adds a Lovecraftian, not understanding element to the series, which is kind of cool. If you do want to understand everything, of course, feel free to look everything up, although I didn't do that the second time because I feel personally that bogged everything down. Although regardless, I will say that this series is a masterpiece, and it is one which should be looked upon very highly. I in fact find myself liking it quite a bit more than the first time I watched it, and upon rewatching it, I'm happy to be able to appreciate the core story, and the beauty of it, and its message. And while Ergo Proxy may seem forgotten sometimes, or it may seem it tells of a world that's forgotten, it really is, to some at least, something of an obscure memory, and a great obscure anime memory. Now for some housekeeping stuff. First off, a big thank you to everyone who watches these, as I find nothing more uplifting than putting a smile on someone's face with my ramblings. I thank all of you who have watched my videos, and all of those who have subscribed especially. And, it is really fulfilling doing these and, having people enjoy my hobby and my work. Second off, since this retrospective is coming to a close, it's once again time for another poll. This one will of course be for the next series to be covered, so please remember to vote. In the meantime, I will be working on a more divergent and long one-off production. Expect a long review on something coming up relatively soon. It's been in the works for a little bit, that's why this video is a little delayed. And it will be quite long, so I hope it's not too much. Although, it is something that I wanted to talk about for some reason. I don't know why, it just came to me. Not quite anime related, but if you like this content, you might like whatever this one-off might be. I felt like I'd already typed it out, might as well produce it. It won't take too long since most of the pre-production stuff is already done. I just gotta put the various elements together now. So anyways, thank you for watching this. Please remember to vote in the next poll. And finally, thank you for helping me remember and relive some great, obscure anime memories.